Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Samach Amud Beis 60b of Maseches Kiddushin. We're starting from the very end of the page, the last three words, where it says Gabe Hektish Tanan. And the Gemara is going to be discussing or relating the case of our Mishnah to a case of Hektish and a case of selling something, of being makdish something, of consecrating something to the Beis HaMikdash, a piece of land, and then it's going to look at a case of selling a piece of land, and it's then going to come back to Kiddushin and want to compare those two cases to the case of Kiddushin, which is discussed in the Mishnah just above. The Mishnah discussed the case where a person betrothed, this was Mekadesh, a woman, on condition that he has a base core of land, and Rashi tells us the base core is a piece of land that is 1,500 by 50 amos, and which I think is 75,000 square amos. So a person has a piece of land that large, and amos between 1.5 feet and 2 feet. So we're looking at somewhere between 125 and 150 thousand square feet, but whatever it is, he gives her Kiddushin on condition that he has this amount of land, and and the Gemara is going to have a question about what if there are certain features on this piece of land, do they still count towards that guarantee that he gave her that he has a base core? So the Gemara says as follows: Gabe Hektish Tanan. With regards to Hektish, with regards to someone who consecrates his field for the temple, for the Beis HaMikdash, it says as follows. So top of the next page, the Mishnah says, Hamakdish Sadeu B'Shas HaYovel. If one sanctifies, consecrates his field during a time of Yovel, meaning not necessarily in the Yovel year, in the Jubilee year, but in a time that Yovel is being practiced, so then all the laws relating to how long you have to return it and how you redeem it are in effect. And so, in that case, the law relating to redeeming one's field would be in effect. And therefore, to redeem his field, and that's right, Hektish doesn't necessarily want your field, or maybe they do, but you have the ability to redeem it, and the question is, what's the price to redeem it and give the money to Hektish? So nosim bizera chomer sa'orim 50 shekel kesef. So for the space where you can plant a chomer of sa'orim, a chomer's worth of barley, so you pay 50 silver shekels per area of where you could plant a chomer sa'orim, and that is actually our base core that we were talking about, I believe. So for every base core you would pay 50 silver shekels to redeem it. Now that, regardless of how good the land is, how bad the land is, there's a set amount for the area of a base core. How do we know that? It's learned from a verse. It's learned from a pasuk. The pasuk says that if one is makdish, if one sanctifies, consecrates his field, so it's valued at 50 shekel kesef for every area of chomer sa'orim that he can plant, zera chomer sa'orim that he can plant a chomer's worth of barley, and that we said is for every base core, which we said is 75,000 square amos. So that's what he has to pay to redeem it. Says the Mishnah there, Hayu nekaim amukim asara tvachim. But if there were ditches that were 10 tvachim deep, 10 hands breadths deep, salayim gevoim asara tvachim, or there are rocks that are 10 tvachim high, so those ein nimdadin ima. Those are not counted towards the base core. They're not counted in terms of does he have a base, in terms of evaluating how much land he has and pricing the cost to redeem it. If he has ditches that are 10 tvachim deep, or rocks that are 10 tvachim high, they don't count. But pachos mikan, but if they're less than that, nimdadin ima, they are counted with it. We ask regarding that, Nehi de bahade ara lo kidshu, although they shouldn't count in terms of counting up the area of the field, but nikdishu babe nafshayu, but they should still be hektish on their own, and one should still have to pay in this amount to redeem them. Right, so fine. So maybe they don't count towards the base court, but they should still be hektish. After all, he was makdish his entire field, and even if they don't count as part of that field, but because they're lower down or they're higher up, but they should count as their own field still. And so you should have to pay. It shouldn't really make a difference, because at the end of the day, you'll have to pay that amount, prorated for that amount of space. Whether it's, you have a higher area in the field, so pay for that spot. You have a lower area in the field, so pay for that spot. So maybe they don't count as part of your overall field, but you were still makdish them. You were makdish the whole area, so you should still have to pay prorated this amount for that space. Now maybe you'll say, no, if it's anything less than a base core, it doesn't count, because the pasuk says that you should pay for every zera chomer sarim, for every area where you can plant a chomer of barley, which is a base core, you should pay 50 shekels. So maybe you'll say anything less than that, you don't, you can't redeem it, or you don't redeem it at that price, so that's what you might suggest. Viramina, but we have a brisa that contradicts that. The brisa says, quoting that pasuk, it says, stay, right? That if one consecrates his field, ma talmud lomar, it actually says mistay, from the field of his inheritance. Ma talmud lomar. Why does it say the field? Because then later in that verse it says, for every area that you can plant a chomer of barley, you should redeem for 50 shekel. So ainli ala shehikdish, bringing azeh. So I only know that if you were makdish, if you consecrated a full area that you can plant a chomer saurim, a chomer of barley, which is a base core. I only know that if you consecrate a base core, then you redeem it at this price. Minayin l'rabos lesech. How do I know that even if one consecrates a lesech, which is half a core, v'chatzi lesech, or half of that, half of a lesech, which would be a quarter of a core, or if one just consecrates a sa, a smaller space, which is just a sa, or tarkav, which is half a sa, or chatzi tarkav, or half of a tarkav, which is a quarter of a sa, vafilu rova, or even a quarter of a kav. How do I know that in all those cases, no matter how small the field or the garden patch that I consecrate, it still gets redeemed, prorated at this cost of 50 shekel for every base core? And again, meaning the Torah delineates a specific amount that you redeem it, regardless of how productive that field or that vegetable patch might be. So how do I know that it doesn't matter the size? Talmud Lomar, sadeh. That's why the Torah says sadeh, a field mikol makom, of any size. A field of any size. So the Mishnah had said that you when one is makdish a field, if you consecrate a field, you have to redeem it at this cost of 50 shekel for every base core. But if there are holes that are 10 tefachim deep, or rocks, or mounds that are 10 tefachim high, they don't count as part of the field. So the Gemara says, so fine, they don't count as part of the field, but they're their own field. Because even if I have a tiny field, you're still redeeming at that rate. So why does it really make a difference? So I have a high area. Okay, so I'll redeem that area at that rate. Or I have a ditch, a furrow. So I still have to redeem it at that rate. So Amar Mar Ukva Bar Chama, Mar Ukva Bar Chama said, Hacha b'nekoyim aleim mayim asking. We're talking about where the holes are filled with water. Mishum delabene zriya nenu, where you can't plant there. Dekanami, and this could be inferred really, dekatani dumya deslaim, because it's similar to the rocks, the givoim. You have high rocks. You can't plant on high rocks. They don't count towards the field. And so too, ditches that you can't plant in because they're filled with water don't count towards the field. So Shema Amino, we see from the fact that we're comparing the ditches to the rocks, that we're talking about a space that you can't plant in. And that's why you don't redeem it at that rate. You redeem it at whatever it's valued at. You still have to redeem it. It's still hektish. But you don't redeem it at the Torah's special rate that it gives. Rather, we would evaluate the exact value of that pool of water or that jagged rock. If there's any value, whatever it might be, that's what you would redeem it at. But it's not a designated rate. So the Gemara asks, Ihachi, if that's the case, if we're talking about where it's filled with water, or it's a rock that you can't plant on, Afiu Pachos Mikein Nami. Even if it's less than 10 tefachim deep. Let's say it's 5 tefachim deep, 5 hands breadths deep. So whatever that is, like this, this deep. So if it's filled with water, I can't plant there. So it still shouldn't count towards part of the field. So why does the Mishnah say only if it's 10 tefachim deep it doesn't count? But if it's 5 tefachim deep, we still count it in terms of measuring out a base core for redeeming it. So the Gemara explains, Hanu Nagni Da'ara Mikru. Those are called, if they're only 5 tefachim, if they're less than 10 tefachim deep, so then they're called Nagni Da'ara, like holes in the land. Meaning, their normal features of any piece of land is going to have some small furrows, or Shidra Da'ara Mikru if they're higher, if they're elevated areas, but they're less than 10 tefachim high, those are called sort of the spine of the land. They're the bones of the land. There's going to be parts that are elevated, parts that are lower. They still count as part of the field because that's normal. But if it's lower than that, if it's lower than 10 tefachim or higher than 10 tefachim, so then it doesn't count towards counting towards a base core, towards in terms of paying. Redeeming the hektish, this consecrated property, at the value that the Torah sets out. Rather, those areas we will evaluate on their own. But they don't count towards the base core. And that's what's important for us, is that when it comes to hektish, areas that are more than more than 10 tefachim deep or higher than 10 tefachim high, they don't count towards counting up a base core. That's by hektish. Says the Gemara, Gabe Mecher Tanan, when it comes to a sale, Tanan we have a Mishnah. Ha'omer lechaveira. A person says to his friend, Beis kor afrani mocher lecha. I'm selling you a base core of land, of dirt. Again, a base core, that's our 75,000 square amos. So he says, I'm selling you a base core. V'hayusham nekayim amukim asar tvachim. And there were ditches that were 10 tvachim deep. O slaim gevayim asar tvachim. Or there were rocks that were 10 tvachim high. Ein nibdading ima. They don't get counted with the field. Pachos mikayim, if they're less than that, if they're less than 10 tefachim deep or less than 10 tefachim high, nimdading ima, they get counted. So again, if I'm selling you a base core, so you want a base core, you don't want that, you're not counting the ditches. So ditches that are more than 10 tefachim, if I told you I'm going to sell you a base core, I can't count the ditches that are more than 10 tefachim deep, or mounds that are more than 10 tefachim high, as part of the measurements of what I guaranteed to sell you. The Amar Mar Ukva Bar Chama, and Mar Ukva Bar Chama said, Af al pi she'ein malei mayim. That's true even if they're not filled with water, as opposed to by hektish, we said specifically when they are filled with water, that's when they don't count. When it comes to a sale, even if they're not filled with water, they don't count. My time, what's the reason? Rav Papa said, "If she'ein adam rotza she'eating es ma'osa b'sada achas v'yir lo kishnayim ukishlosha makomos." Because a person doesn't want to pay for a field, and that's supposed to be one field, and it looks like 2 or 3 fields. So what we're saying is, when it comes to a sale, if I tell you I'm going to sell you a base core, and I have a field that has ditches in it, and those ditches are more than 10 tefachim deep, so they don't count towards towards the measurement that I guarantee you, towards the base core. I have to come up with a base core that doesn't include the ditches. Now, you could technically plant something in those ditches. Yeah, but when you buy a field, you're expecting one field, not a field that's really two different fields, because there's these ditches or separate areas. So you're expecting one field, not expecting more than one field. And that's what you're paying for. So, and that's true even if they're not filled with water. Because you just want individual, you don't want separate planting areas, you want one field. So when it comes to hektish, we said that only if the ditches are filled with water, they don't count towards the base core. But if they're not filled with water, so then they kind of get measured on their own. They don't count towards the base core, but they're measured at the same rate, because it doesn't really matter the size. When it comes to redeeming hektish, there's a rate the Torah gives us for fields, which is 50 shekel for every base core, and but you don't need a full base core to count it. Even smaller areas will count prorated on their own, based on that measurement, that price. That's when it comes to hektish, and that again, it counts even if there's no water in it. It only doesn't count if it's filled with water. When it comes to sale, even if it's not filled with water, a ditch that's more than 10 tefachim deep does not count towards a base core that we're counting out. So the Gemara wants to know, Hachamai, when it comes to Kiddushin, where a man is mekadesh a woman and says, on condition that I have a base core of land, what's the story? What's the halacha? Lehektish madmin Allah, or lemecher madmin Allah? Do we compare Kiddushin to hektish, to where you consecrate property, or do we compare it to a mecher, to a sale? And the question really boils down to, if a man says he's mekadesh a woman, he betroths a woman on condition that he has a base core of land, and it turns out that on that base core of land, there are ditches that are more than 10 tefachim deep. So does that still count as a base core of land? Has he fulfilled his condition? So the Gemara answers, Mistavra lahektish madmin la. It's logical to suggest that we compare Kiddushin to hektish. Not because Kiddushin's like hektish, that you're consecrating something, but simply for the following reason. Da'amar la anatarachna vizarana umaisina. Because he can tell her, I'll put in the effort, and I will plant, and I will bring home the goods. In other words, when it comes to Kiddushin, what's happening here? It's not like a sale where I'm buying land. If I'm buying land, I don't want 2 fields, I want 1 field. So if there's these deep furrows that are like other fields, I don't want that. But when it comes to Kiddushin, so he gives her Kiddushin, and he gives it to her, he wants her to know that he has land, so he says, on condition that I have a base core of land. And on that land there are ditches. So the Gemara says, that doesn't concern her. If he say it's 2 separate fields, okay, doesn't really matter. As long as as long as he says, I'm going to put in the effort to bring home, to plant there and to bring home the produce. So it doesn't really matter if there are ditches there that are more than 10 tvachim, assuming they're not filled with water. If they're filled with water, so that's a different story. That would be like hektish, where they don't count because you can't plant there. And so she wants an area that you can plant. So as long as you can plant there, so then it counts. I guess it would follow also that if there are areas that are higher than 10 tefachim, that are, jagged rocks, slayim, they're rocks, at least if they're not plantable, so then just like that doesn't count by hektish, and certainly doesn't count by a sale, so it won't count by Kiddushin either, because she wants a base core that you can plant on. That's what he's trying to show her, that he has a base core that he can plant in. So elevated rocks won't count towards that measurement, because you can't plant there, but furrows that are more than 10 tefachim deep, as long as they're not filled with water, they will count towards measuring out the base core for Kiddushin, because at the end of the day, he could plant there, and it's up to him to put in the effort, but he can tell her, I'll put in the effort, and I will bring home the produce, even from those areas. Okay. So now we have a new Mishnah, and this Mishnah deals with a very fundamental concept, and that is how one has to stipulate a condition. And we're going to learn about the opinion of Rabbi Meir as follows. Actually, we'll just read it. Rabbi Meir says the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir Omer, Kol Tanai she'eno kitanai b'nei Gad u'b'nei Ruven eno Tanai. Any Tanai that is not stipulated in the way following the formula that was used by the members of the tribe of Gad and the tribe of Reuven is not a good condition. What is this referring to? So when the Jewish people were traveling through the desert and approaching the land of Israel, so they came to the lands on the other side of the Jordan of the Bnei Gilad, and there was a very it was a good land for people who had a lot of sheep. So the tribes that had sheep and there was good grazing area there. They said, actually, we want to keep this land on this side of the Jordan. So after some back and forth, basically it was agreed. Moshe said, as long as you go to battle along with your brothers and help them conquer the land of Israel, so then you can have that land. However, the way that Moshe said it was that if the Bnei Gad, the children of God and the children of Reuven, cross over with their brethren, cross the Jordan armed for war, and help conquer the land, so then the land will be given to them. But then Moshe didn't stop there, and he said, and if they do not, and he said the other side of the story, the other side of the coin, and if they do not do that, so then they're only going to receive land in Canaan. They're not going to get this land that's over the Jordan. So Rabbi Meir says that there are actually a number of conditions that we can derive from here of how you have to make a Tanai. We can learn from the way that Moshe made the condition, how you make a condition. Number one, we see that you have to speak out both sides of the condition. You can't just say, if you cross the Jordan and go to battle, then you'll get this land, and leave it to everybody to figure out, but if they don't, then they won't get it. That would not count as a Tanai. The condition would not take effect. You have to say both sides of the coin. You have to say, and if you do not, so then it won't count. So for a situation of Kiddushin, or actually Rashi gives an example of a get. Rashi says, if a man says, here's your get on condition you give me 200 zuz, but he doesn't say, and if you don't give me 200 zuz, it's not a get. He doesn't say the other side of the story, then it's not a Tanai. There's a way that the Torah says you have to make a condition, and that is that you have to stipulate both sides of the coin. And if you don't, it's not a condition. That's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rashi actually says that there are other conditions that Rabbi Meir requires that we also learn from the Bnei Gad and the Bnei Reuven, or really the way that Moshe stipulated the condition with them. And that is, Rashi adds that first of all you need Tanai Kodem Lemaisa. So you first need the necessary condition followed by the result. So when Moshe made the condition with them, he said, if you do X, then you'll get Y. If you cross the Jordan and go to battle, then you'll get this land. So you have to stipulate the condition first. So it's actually in the case of get, you would have to say, according to this, if you give me 200 zuz, then you'll receive this get. Then this get will take effect. And if you don't give me 200 zuz, then it won't take effect. But you have to stipulate the condition before you stipulate the result. And the last thing he says, that you need the hein kodem lelav. You need the positive side of the condition before the negative side. So you need that if you do this, then the condition's fulfilled, and you'll receive such and such. And if you don't, then you won't. But you can't say if you don't do this, then X, and if you do it, then Y. You always have to put the positive before the negative. Those are three things that we learn from the condition that was made with the children of God and the children of Reuven. Again, number one is that you have to state both sides. If you do, then X, and if you don't, then Y. Number two, you need Tanai Kodem Lemaisa. By the way, the first thing that we mentioned is called a Tanai Kafel, a double Tanai, a double condition. Tanai Kafel. You have to say both sides of the condition. Number two is that you need Tanai Kodem Lemaisa. You need to say the condition before the act, before the result. if you do this, then X. But you can't say you'll get X if you do this. The Tanai has to be said before the action. And finally, you need the positive side before the negative side. You have to say, if you do this, then this, and if you don't, then this, as opposed to, you can't say, if you don't do this, then this, and if you do this, then that. Okay, those are the three things. So back to the Mishnah. Rabbi Meir says, Kol Tanai she'eino k'tanai b'nei Gad b'nei Ruvain, any condition that's not following the formula of the condition that was made with the people of the tribe of Gad and the people of the tribe of Ruvain, Eino Tanai is not a condition, Shenamar, as the verse says, Vayomer Alehem, and Moshe said to them, Im Yavru b'nei Gad b'nei Ruvain, if b'nei Gad b'nei Ruvain will cross the Jordan and go to war, then they'll get this land. Uksiv, and then it says, V'im lo Yavru, it says the other side, if they will not, Im lo Yavru chalutim, if they won't cross armed, then they will not get the land over the Jordan. Rather, it says, "V'no chazu b'sochachem be'eretz Canaan." You'll inherit amongst your brethren in the land of Canaan. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel says, no. You don't see from there that you need this double Tanai. Tzarech hadavar la'omro. The reason why Moshe said the second half of the condition is not because it's necessary to always state the second half of the condition, and you can't just expect people to figure it out. No, we could expect people to figure it out. You can usually infer from the first half what the second half is. If you help us conquer the land, then you'll get this land. We could figure out, but if you don't, then you won't get the land. But here it says Moshe had to stipulate the second half for a different reason. And that is Shilmali King, if he hadn't said so, Yesh b'mashma shafiu b'eretz Canaan lo yinchalu. We might have inferred that they won't even get land in the land of Canaan. See, if Moshe had said, it says Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, if Moshe had said, if you cross the Jordan and help us, you'll get this land, and if you don't, then you won't get this land. You might have thought they don't get any land. So that's why Moshe had to say, but if you don't, you'll just get land in the land of Canaan. So then I know that they'll at least get land in the land of Canaan if they don't fulfill the condition. Says the Gemara, Shaper Kamalei Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel has a good point against Rabbi Meir. You can't prove from here that you need a double Tanai Kafel. He's making a very good point. Moshe had to stipulate the second half, maybe not because you need a double Tanai Kafel, but maybe because he had to make it clear that if they don't cross, they'll still get land in the land of Canaan. If they don't help in battle, they'll still get land in the land of Canaan. Amar Lacha Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir would respond, no, Isaga Daitach Lavo Tanai Kafelhu. If you would think, if the purpose of saying the second half was not because it's necessary to double it, to make a Tanai Kafel, Lichtov, it should have said, V'im lo Yavru, if they don't cross, V'nechazu b'sochachem be'eretz Canaan. And they shall, b'sochachem. V'nechazu b'sochachem. They will get an inheritance amongst you. Be'eretz Canaan, l'amali. Why does it have to say in the land of Canaan? I could figure out that that's what we're talking about. If it says V'nochazu b'sochachem, they'll inherit amongst you, amongst the rest of the people of Israel. So I know that that's talking about in the land of Canaan. Be'eretz Canaan l'lam. We talk about the next page. Why does he have to say in the land of Canaan? Shma mina l'tnai kafel. So we see from there that the idea is to teach me about this double tonight, l'tnai kafel hu da'asa, that you need a double tonight. Meaning, because by stipulating in the land of Canaan, what he's really in essence saying is, and not in the land of Gilad. And it's necessary to speak that out, because that's a way to speak it out. Because the point is you have to say a second half of the condition, which is, if you don't cross and help us, you won't get the land of Gilad. Right? The land on the other side of the Jordan. If you help us go to battle, you'll receive the land on the other side of the Jordan. If you don't help us in battle, you won't receive the land on the other side of the Jordan. It's necessary to state that. How do I know? Because that's why you have to say you'll receive land in the land of Canaan. By adding in those extra words, you could have just said you'll receive amongst your brothers. But by adding in you'll receive amongst your brothers into the land of Canaan, there's an inference, there's an implication, and not on the other side of the Jordan. And we see it must have been necessary to have that inference available. because otherwise he could have just not mentioned in the land of Canaan. Says Rabbi Meir, you still see that you need a Tanai Kafel, a double Tanai. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel will respond to that. If the Torah had to write B'Eretz Canaan, it had to write in the land of Canaan, because it had not have Amina v'nochazu b'sovachem B'Eretz Gilad. I might have thought that he was saying that if you don't cross and help us in battle, you'll inherit amongst yourselves in the land of Gilad. You'll still get land on the other side of the Jordan, whatever you already possess. That Moshe, I would have understood if it didn't say in the land of Canaan. I would have said what it means is you'll inherit what you have already, because they are already taking control of some land on the other side of the Jordan. But you won't get more than that. That's what I might have thought that it means. So, about the Eretz Canaan, I would have thought that on this side of the condition they wouldn't have gotten land on the other side of in Canaan. So Moshe had to say, says Rabbi Chanina to Rabbi Meir, Moshe had to say that if you don't cross, you will still get land in the land of Canaan. The Rabbi Meir says, B'sochachem kol hecha de'islechu mashma. Then no, on its own, B'sochachem, amongst you, it means wherever you are. So if they're wherever you are, and that would include Canaan. I guess I don't know if they would. Cause the assumption is that even if they don't go to battle, they would have come across. Okay, this needs a little further explanation, but Kol Hecha de Islu, Rabbi Meir is saying that just on its own, with the word B'sochachem, I would have understood it includes that they would get land in Canaan, and therefore the words B'Eretz Canaan are extra, and the land of Canaan is extra. Why is it necessary? Rabbi Meir continues to maintain it's necessary to be able to infer, and not in the land of Gilad, which is, why is that necessary? That's necessary because you always need that other side of the condition. If you go to battle with us, you'll get the land in the land of Gilad, on the other side of the Jordan. If you do not go to battle with us, you'll get in the land of Canaan and not in the land of Gilad, because that's necessary to have that second side, that you won't receive land in the land of Gilad. You always need a T'nai Kafel. In order for a condition to take effect, Rabbi Meir holds, it has to be modeled after the formula that Moshe used, which is that it has to be a T'nai Kafel. Both sides of the condition have to be spoken out. We'll stop here, pick up with this next time.